The sky over West Chiba finally breaks, unleashing a torrential downpour that mirrors the cold fury rising in Tatsuya Iguchi's chest. The rain hammers against the pavement with a relentless rhythm, signaling that the fragile peace of the neutral ground has officially been shattered. Surrounded by a group of rugged, scarred rivals, Tatsuya stands his ground with a terrifyingly calm demeanor. The lead attacker, a man with a jagged tattoo near his eye, loses his patience entirely as he screams into the rain, demanding to know who the hell Tatsuya thinks he is. He barks the question with a manic intensity, but Tatsuya remains unfazed, his silence becoming more threatening than any shout. Tatsuya lowers his head, the shadow of his wet hair masking his expression as he lets the insults wash over him. He is no longer the kitchen hand trying to play by the rules. He is a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike, his focus narrowing down to the singular goal of neutralizing the threat in front of him. Tatsuya stands tall in the center of the storm, his silhouette framed against the dark urban backdrop as the rain drenches his blackout shirt. He looks like a grim guardian of the streets, standing over the mud and grit with a posture that screams lethal intent. The transition is complete. The mad dog has officially returned to the world of shadows, where his true value is found. Tatsuya spits into the dirt with a look of pure disgust, a dark bruise already forming under his eye from the night's earlier tension. He looks down at a discarded lighter in the mud, his expression turning cold and sharp as the adrenaline begins to surge through his veins. He stares directly into the camera, his gaze piercing through the rain with a predatory intensity that would make a lesser man's heart stop. The soft, rehabilitated facade is completely gone, replaced by the hardened eyes of the head of the Komai Special Forces who has seen and survived 1,000 street battles. The rivals jeer at him, calling him a creep and mocking his silence, but they have no idea that every second Tatsuya doesn't speak is another second he's calculating their downfall. One of them leans in with a cruel smirk, unaware that Tatsuya's focus has locked onto his every movement, preparing to unleash a whirlwind of violence that will leave them broken on the wet asphalt. The action explodes with a sudden violent burst of energy. Tatsuya lunges forward with a speed that catches the entire group off guard, his form a blur of motion as he cuts through the rain. He doesn't just throw a punch, he launches his entire weight into a high-speed assault, showing the full power of his Special Forces training as he dismantles their defenses in a single heartbeat. He winds up a devastating strike, his fist coiling with the raw power of his suppressed rage. His eyes are wide and bloodshot from the strain, a manic determination driving every muscle in his body as he prepares to deliver a blow that will echo through the silent parking lot. A flash of pure impact. The air itself seems to ripple from the sheer velocity of the movement as Tatsuya's arm becomes a streak of lethal intent. The brutality peaks as a heavy strike connects, shattering the wall of rain with the sheer force of the collision. The impact is so heavy it seems to vibrate through the page, the culmination of a mad dog who has finally been let off his leash. The impact is absolute as Tatsuya's fist connects squarely with the lead rival's jaw. The force of the blow is immense, erupting in a violent mist of rainwater and gore as the man's head snaps back with a sickening crunch. This is the raw violence Tatsuya was born for, a perfectly executed strike that sends shockwaves through the night and leaves his opponent reeling backward into the darkness. The lead rival's body twists in midair as the sheer momentum of Tatsuya's punch sends him skidding across the flooded pavement. His shoes scuff the wet asphalt with a dry, screeching sound as he collapses into the dirt. The remaining thugs are frozen in place, their expressions shifting from cocky arrogance to pure, unadulterated terror as they watch their leader fall. Tatsuya looms over the fallen body, his blackout shirt soaked and his breathing heavy. The two remaining goons lose their minds, their faces contorted in a panicked frenzy as they scream in total shock. They can't comprehend how a single person could move with such lethal efficiency. Tatsuya stands in the center of the lot, the rain washing the blood from his knuckles as he turns his predatory gaze toward his next targets. He looks them dead in the eye with a cold, unyielding expression, making it clear that their night of bullying is over. Heavy rain hammers down on the urban sprawl of West Chiba. The massive neon sign of the mammoth pachinko parlor is visible in the background, partially obscured by the torrential downpour. A close-up of raindrops splashing into a growing puddle next to a dark bush. The rain continues to pour over the silhouette of an apartment building, the leaves of a nearby tree dripping with water. The storm clouds begin to break, revealing a glimpse of the night sky above the city's tree line and high-rise buildings. A wide shot of the parking lot fence where the fight occurred. The sound of heavy breathing echoes through the empty lot. Keiji Imai lies face down on the wet pavement, his body battered and his clothes soaked. He mutters to himself in a daze, wondering why he is there and what he is doing. A tight close-up of Keiji's eyes snapping open as a sharp pain shoots through him. Keiji grimaces as he remembers the ambush, his face pressed against the rough asphalt. Keiji sits up and looks at his swollen, bruised hand. He shouts in shock, "My finger looks like a giant turd," and laments that he won't even be able to pick his nose. Keiji's expression shifts to one of total disbelief and wonder. He sits in the middle of the empty parking lot, staring intensely at his open palm. A large close-up of Keiji's hand reveals the signet ring, his proof of existence, resting safely in his palm. The rain has washed the mud away, leaving the symbol of his loyalty gleaming. Kaname sits astride his customized Kawasaki motorcycle, silhouetted against the city lights. He is exhaling a plume of cigarette smoke, looking contemplative and imposing as he waits in the dark. Kaname takes a drag of his cigarette, his expression troubled. He wonders where Tatsuya and Keiji have disappeared to. A wide shot of the young bowling center at night. Kaname debates whether he should just go home since he has work the next day, but he worries that Tatsuya might feel lonely or abandoned in foreign territory. Kaname's eye widens in surprise as he hears a familiar voice. Tatsuya stands before Kaname, grinning widely despite the fresh cuts and bruises covering his face. Kaname is horrified, shouting, "What the hell happened to your face?" Tatsuya tells him to shut up and insists that nothing happened where it wasn't allowed, implying he stayed away from the neutral zone. Kaname reminds him of the non-aggression pact. Kaname looks at Tatsuya with a serious, almost disappointed gaze. He reminds Tatsuya that because he is on parole, he isn't supposed to be fighting anywhere. Tatsuya goes silent, the weight of his legal situation sinking in. Tatsuya lights a cigarette, hiding his battered knuckles. He claims he put some thought into it and isn't worried because no one knows who he is that far from his new home. Kaname asks who he fought, but Tatsuya deflects, telling him it doesn't matter. Kaname notes that at least it looks like Tatsuya fought bare-handed. A close-up of Tatsuya's hand reveals the true extent of the damage. His skin is raw and shredded from the intensity of the brawl. Tatsuya mutters to himself that he only went bare-handed because he couldn't find any useful weapons and complains that Chiba is messed up. Kaname delivers a lecture on the philosophy of the streets, claiming that true men settle their scores with nothing but their bare knuckles. Tatsuya merely scoffs, telling Kaname to save the tough guy talk for his groupie, Keiji. As they move through the rows of parked bikes, Tatsuya pivots the conversation to the kid who was ambushed earlier, curious about what kind of trouble Keiji managed to get himself into this time. Fixing his gaze on the vice head, Tatsuya presses for answers about the strange obsession Keiji has with that signet ring. He can tell there is more to the story than a simple piece of jewelry. Kaname remains tight-lipped for a moment, his expression unreadable as Tatsuya flashes a knowing, mischievous grin, sensing he's poked a hole in the big man's facade. A sea of luxury cars and delinquent crews fills the night as Kaname explains the grim reality of their world. Out here, respect is the only currency that matters, and it is a hell of a lot harder to come by than money. To a guy like Keiji, being respected is a heavy burden. It means sacrificing your own freedom to live up to the expectations of the person you look up to. With a cool, calculated gaze, Kaname admits that the ring serves as the physical proof of that bond. It is the anchor that keeps Keiji loyal to the Kilihito cause. Tatsuya takes a long drag from his cigarette, letting the smoke drift into the night air. He listens in silence, weighing Kaname's words against his own chaotic past and the fragile peace of his parole. Kaname leans in close, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper as he prepares to drop a bombshell that would shatter Keiji's world. Tatsuya's jaw drops in utter disbelief as Kaname reveals the hilarious truth. The sacred signet ring wasn't an heirloom or a gang treasure. Kaname actually found the damn thing rotting in a garbage dump near his house. The vice head erupts into boisterous laughter, slapping Tatsuya on the back. He confesses that he lied through his teeth, telling Keiji the ring was worth a fortune just to give the kid something to believe in. Amused by the sheer absurdity of the lie, Tatsuya can't help but smirk. Kaname signals it's time to move out, telling Tatsuya to hop on the bike before the night gets any shorter. Morning breaks over the Sanru charcoal yakiniku restaurant, where the legendary Mad Dog is forced to swap his fists for tongs and grilling grates. The peace is immediately shattered as Keiji appears, holding up a small, wide-eyed dog to confront Tatsuya. He's put two and two together and is absolutely convinced that Tatsuya was the secret warrior who saved his ring. A second associate joins the fray holding a sleek black cat, cornering Tatsuya with the relentless logic of a fanboy. He insists there is no other explanation for how the ring was recovered. Sweat pours down Tatsuya's face as he tries to maintain his cover, barking back at the idiots to shut up and get lost. He's a man on parole, and the last thing he needs is a group of local delinquents blowing his secret. The duo won't take no for an answer, laughing off Tatsuya's anger while clutching their pets and teasing him for acting like a shy big brother. The delinquent holding the cat promises that their secret is safe, even as they continue to hover over him while he works. Tatsuya hunches over the glowing charcoal, surrounded by his persistent new friends who are already offering to help with the restaurant chores. As the realization sinks in, he knows his hope for a quiet life is dead. These lunatics are going to drag him into a world of absolute trouble from here on out. Under a scorching afternoon sun, the heavy drone of cicadas marks the beginning of a long day in West Chiba. The urban landscape stretches out, dominated by the towering windowless walls of the local pachinko parlors that define this grit-stained city. Tucked away in a quiet alley, the Sanru charcoal yakiniku restaurant stands ready for the dinner rush. Despite the holiday, the staff works tirelessly behind the scenes, prepping the grills and tending to the fires that keep the business alive. A guttural scream of absolute agony rips through the air as Keiji reaches his breaking point. Sweat pours down his face in rivers, his muscles twitching with exhaustion as he finally hits his physical limit. The holiday heat offers no reprieve as the trio continues their grueling training session on the dirt lot. Keiji collapses onto his back, gasping for air as he declares he has finished his fourth set and cannot move another muscle. Kaname towers over him with unyielding energy, barking at the boy to show some real guts, while Tatsuya hovers nearby, wondering why they are spending their precious time off pushing their bodies to the brink of collapse. Kaname strikes a ridiculous pose, flexing his massive frame until his veins nearly pop. He shouts that this entire ordeal is for one glorious purpose, sculpting hot bodies to impress the ladies at the beach or the pool. Tatsuya merely stares in deadpan silence, questioning if his ally has finally lost his mind to the heat. The display of vanity continues as Kaname thrusts his arm back, demanding they admire the definition of his pectoralis major. Keiji recoils in sheer disgust, screaming for the older man to get his gross nipple out of his face. In a bizarre shift of energy, the tension turns into an anatomical appreciation society as Kaname and Tatsuya trade genuine compliments on their deltoids and abdominal definition. Keiji watches from the sidelines, completely weirded out that a group of street-tough dropouts has somehow become experts on human muscular structure. Tatsuya catches his breath and flashes a confident, challenge-ready grin. He suggests they dive right back in for another set, seemingly invigorated by the very strain that has Keiji begging for mercy. A local stray cat watches the humans with a judging, cold gaze from atop a nearby wall. Kaname mocks Tatsuya's blue-collar worker pride, but Tatsuya casually brushes it off, noting that he has always been naturally gifted at moving heavy weight. Keiji notes Tatsuya's unusual enthusiasm for physical labor, sparking a dark memory from his time behind bars. Tatsuya reveals that in juvenile hall, doing 200 push-ups every single day was the baseline for survival. The humor evaporates from Tatsuya's eyes as he stares into the distance, his voice turning icy. While the physical training was never a challenge for him, he admits with chilling sincerity that life in juvie was far from a pleasure cruise. Tatsuya reflects on how he managed to maintain his sanity by carving out a niche for himself among friends within the facility walls. However, even for a seasoned problem child like him, there was one specific punishment that proved impossible to break. The memory shifts to the suffocating silence of a shadow-drenched cell known as solitary confinement. It is a cramped, windowless tomb where the only way to earn your freedom is to endure the mental torture of folding 3,000 paper cranes. The instructors at the facility were masters of psychological warfare, having analyzed Tatsuya's screening tests to find his exact breaking point. They handpicked a punishment that targeted his lack of patience and his clumsy nature. Tatsuya stares into the void with hollow, wide eyes as cold sweat beads on his forehead. For a man who struggled with basic tasks like tying his own shoelaces, this meticulous, repetitive labor was a trap designed to drive him into absolute despair. Trapped in the unrelenting stillness of the cell, Tatsuya found he had nowhere left to run. After a full hour of fumbling with the delicate paper, he hadn't even managed to complete a single fold. When the first crane was finally finished, a scream of pure, unadulterated frustration escaped his lungs. By the time the sun set on that first day, he had only managed to produce 5 measly birds. The isolation began to eat away at his focus, making his fingers freeze up and his memory slip. He became a prisoner of his own rising anger, losing track of reality as the days blurred into a cycle of failure. Slowly and painfully, his efficiency began to climb out of sheer necessity. By the 10th day, he had managed to increase his output to 30 cranes a day, the room slowly filling with the evidence of his struggle. The mental toll eventually manifested in disturbing ways, leaving Tatsuya with a hollow, haunted gaze. On the rare occasions he was allowed to walk outside, he realized with horror that he had started talking to the paper cranes just to hear the sound of a voice. By the 40th day, with roughly 2,600 cranes completed, the psychological dam finally began to crack. The last remnants of his sanity shattered like glass as he reached the absolute limit of human endurance. The final cruelty was the variety of paper the instructors left for him. As the pile dwindled, he was forced to work with the most difficult microscopic sizes imaginable. Tatsuya's massive, calloused hands tremble as he tries to manipulate a scrap of paper no larger than a thumbnail. It was the only paper left, and it demanded a level of precision that his trembling fingers simply could not provide. He tried over and over until his spirit snapped. In a fit of blind, helpless rage, he began violently bashing his own head against the stone wall of his cell. After an agonizing month and a half, the nightmare of solitary confinement finally ends, as the 3,000th paper crane is completed. Tatsuya's silhouette sits motionless in the dim light of his small one-person tomb, watched closely by instructors who never let him out of their sight until the final fold was done. The trauma of that cell left scars deeper than any street fight. Looking back at the bloody stains decorating the stone walls, Tatsuya is struck by a terrifying realization of his own fragility. He stares at the gore with wide, hollow eyes, shaken to his core by the memory of the despair that drove him to self-destruction. Those haunting bloodstains remain etched in his mind as a permanent warning. He clenches his teeth with a fierce iron resolve, swearing that he will do absolutely anything to survive his parole and never set foot in that facility again.